I don't know if you guys know this, but I first got my foot in the door on YouTube during the COVID hyperpop era, where basically I'd cover the artist and also do reaction videos showing my normal friend all the weird viral hyperpop songs.
Alright. I didn't think you'd like that. We only made it 1 minute and 22 seconds through the song.
That was a move.
Not a fan?
I got pretty into this music at the time, and while I still don't think I love the super hyper type Adderall sort of music, I did have a big appreciation for the genre, and I thought it was a very cool time. Like, all the internet collectives and stuff popping up was very fun to see. Felt kind of like the SoundCloud era, revamped and a bit more underground. But this era only lasted a couple of years and changed a lot, with a lot of the artists all going their own ways in different directions. For some artists, they went back underground, others toned down the hyperpop stuff and kind of merged into other genres, and some kept doing the same thing. And after reminiscing for a while, I was sort of curious as to where a lot of these artists are today, because I haven't really kept up with a lot of them. Little disclaimer here, I know hyperpop's been around for a long time with artists like Sophie, PC Music, or even Charlie XCX, but I'm mostly referring to like the COVID era of SoundCloud hyperpop. I mean, I'm sure you guys know what I mean. Also, I'm going to be looking into artists that I was like more familiar with and artists that I was a bigger fan of. I'm not going to cover everyone in this video, just like the bigger dogs. So with that being said, let's dive in. Breakins was one of my favorites from this era, and he's one of the few people I've kept up with to this day. Toward the end of the era, he dropped the album Hypochondriac at the end of 2022, but then he went radio silent. On occasion, he posts songs on his alt SoundCloud and has also been doing features here and there with people like Aries and Quedeca, but apart from that, it seems like he's been MIA for the larger part of 3 years. His subreddit regularly has people asking where he's been, but I think if I had to guess, he's just not a big social media guy and is probably gearing up to release something soon, I'd imagine, and I hope. Regardless, Breakins is most likely one of the bigger artists from this era, and had he continued putting out music following Hypochondriac, I'd imagine he'd be a bit bigger, although that doesn't seem to be his objective. Hypochondriac was very successful and very good, and despite a really stupid review from Anthony Fantano that I'm still upset about to this day, I think Breakins is the GOAT, and he followed me on Instagram too back then, which was pretty cool. Oz Quinn, OS Quinn, or just Quinn, however you want to say it. Quinn was originally one of the OG frontrunners on the hyperpop scene with her song I Don't Want That Many Friends in the first place. And from there, I felt like she was really kind of like one of the top dogs, like I'd say big three of hyperpop back then. Since then, I think she's gone a bit more underground and has started collaborating with artists like Fear Dorian. And honestly, I think she went with like a bit less of a hyperpop sound. I mean, none of her new stuff really, I think, qualifies for hyperpop, at least the stuff I've heard. But I do think she took her sound in a really cool direction. I can't really pin down her production style to like one style because every project I've heard from her since that era sounds different. Like 2022's Quinn album, from what I remember, was a more experimental rap sort of project, whereas this most recent project with Fear Dorian is a bit more cloud rappy, if I could call it anything. Again, these are big overgeneralizations because her production style is so unique, but it's always interested me ever since Quinn came out, so it's definitely worth checking out. And like many other artists, as you'll see, she's still performing and has a solid core audience. Eric DOA had one of the funniest and craziest careers following the hyperpop era. For a while, he was running with Glaive a lot, who don't worry, I'll talk about, and they did that collab album. And it seems like he took his sound more from like hyperpop music to more of a pop route. It was still pretty unique, like they did have unique elements in all of their songs following this whole era, but it just was a lot less hyper. It looked like they were trying to have maybe a little more mainstream appeal. And I wasn't the hugest fan of these type of projects. Eric still had some good stuff, but it wasn't my favorite. And then he went viral for this meme.
Imagine if Ninja got a low table fade. Imagine if Ninja got a low table fade.
Which was ironic because this meme got so big, and there's a ton of people, like everyone was singing the song that my niche artist was creating, and it wasn't even a real song, so it's kind of an interesting thing to see. And the meme is still massive to this day. Regardless, Eric again is still putting music out, with his last album coming out in 2024, and he definitely makes some solid music and again has a very strong core fan base. Midwest was another one of my favorite artists from this era, and I personally like the direction he went more than most people from this era, because while I like the pop music, it was never my favorite genre, and I enjoyed the more rap side of things because hyperpop was kind of like a mix of like rap, pop, and whatever. And it seemed like Midwest leaned into that side of the genre a bit more, especially collaborating with fellow up-and-comers at that time. If you guys remember that old SoundCloud era of like the 2020s with Cash Dami, Baby Santana, Slump Sixes, and more on his Back in Action 2 project. I was a big fan of that era coming up along with the Hyperpop era, so seeing those two come together was really cool to see for me. He was still doing some like Hyperpop type shit at this time too, but eventually he locked in collabs with artists like Babytron, Denzel Curry, and Dro Kenji, which kind of made his direction seem a little more clear. I still gotta listen to his latest project, Archangel, but he was always one of my favorite evolutions from this era, and to this day, he still has a strong core fan base and is touring. One thing you'll notice about the artists from this era that I'm covering is that they're all still touring, making music, and they all still have strong core fan bases, and that's mostly because they were some of the biggest artists from this era, and they retained strong audiences that have allowed them to continue living off their music. The only people I'd really say like seem to have fallen off are the smaller tier artists that just weren't as big as these guys, but most people have been able to make it work, usually just shifting genres a bit rather than sticking to that OG hyperpop sound. For example, Lou. I don't know if you guys remember Lou. I didn't even care to look into him for this video. He got mad at me for making a reaction and not liking his songs, so I'm not sure where Lou's at today. Glaive is probably one of the bigger artists to come from this scene. He was boys with Eric DOA, like I mentioned, and also briefly went more into that pop sound, but now what I'm seeing from him is he's doing a bit more of a Two Hollis type of music, if you know what I mean, like a mix of EDM and pop or whatever you want to call it. So similar to the hyperpop thing, but you know, not quite the same, not as glitchy and crazy as it was before. Bass heavy. His music was bass heavy too back in the day. And his music is solid, but I do remember this big controversy when he signed to a label and he had that collab song with MGK. Everyone was mad, saying he sold out the scene and wasn't bringing people with him. Although he does collaborate with Curtains a lot, if you guys remember Curtains, and so it's good he kept one connection at least. And he definitely leaned into that emo sound for a bit too. Although the MGK thing was years back, and he's retained a fairly strong audience ever since signing, because when he first blew up, he was definitely one of the biggest from this scene. Regardless, Glaive, of course, like everyone else, is still touring and is probably one of the more successful artists from this era, which in part, I feel like it's just he has like one of those like big fandoms, you know, he's like a quirky kind of personality, like the awkwardness and everything, so that probably helps. So I'd imagine that's part of the reason why he's still so successful to this day. 100 Gangs was definitely one of the top artists from this era. They weren't quite in the same vein as a lot of the other people I'm talking about, because I think they were one of like the OGs that sort of ushered in this new wave, which is why they became some of the biggest artists from this era and some of the most critically acclaimed. They've stayed pretty true to their sound, making that more experimental, weird stuff as always, and their last project was in 2023, which I thought was pretty good. Oh yeah, Dumbest Girl Alive, Doritos and Fritos, Billy Knows Jamie, those are some songs I really enjoyed. Dylan Brady, I've seen, has been doing a lot of production work for tons of random people throughout the music industry, like Skrillex, for example. And I'm not sure if Laura Les has been really doing too much production work. I know she is a producer. I haven't seen her name popping around too much, but maybe I'm just missing it. They are still touring, though, and things like that. So I'd imagine more music as a collective is on its way, and they are definitely still one of the biggest artists from this era. Now, coming up here, we have two interesting cases, starting off with Jane Remover. Jane Remover is definitely one of the biggest and most interesting artists to come from this era, because she hasn't really left the super experimental hyperpop genre, but instead has continued to evolve her sound in really interesting ways, and she's become one of the genre's leading artists. Her latest album, Revenge Seekers, has been critically acclaimed from the music nerd community, and she's got a super strong fandom, breaking out of just that original hyperpop community in a way that surprises me, kind of. Like, I'm seeing Jane Remover pop up in conversations with like opium artists and stuff like that, so it's kind of like these niches all sort of merged. I mean, even seeing artists like Che blow up right now, it kind of reminds me of like fusing hyperpop and rage and then like giving it a couple of years to grow, and that's what Che sounds like to me. Same with Osama Sun too. If you think about it, the hyperpop niche was coming up at the same time as like that plug and beat and also rage sound. They all kind of like meshed together, and now it's just like one big underground scene, which is really cool to see. And it's kind of hard to describe her music, but she's still crushing it, and honestly it just feels like her career is beginning in a lot of ways. So I guess it is kind of cool how we're seeing all these sounds kind of combine and merge in interesting ways, and Jane Remover is definitely a good example of that. But yeah, not sure how else I'd really want to describe her career. It's kind of hard to put into words just how critically acclaimed she is, unless you're kind of in the niche, you know. But someone who I always personally preferred was Underscores. Her and Jane are both artists that I think have stuck to their guns, in my opinion, and really carried the whole evolution of the hyperpop scene, which is ironic because they've also collaborated multiple times. Regardless, I think Underscores in particular has leaned a little more into pop music, but very similarly to Jane Remover has been treasured in the music nerd community as an innovator, and I really enjoyed her last album, Wall Socket. I've always liked her a little more than Jane Remover's music. I don't know, it's just kind of a personal opinion, I guess, but it's hard to describe her and Jane's music in words other than the fact that it seems like their styles have both evolved in their own ways, and their latest music seems like fully flushed out ideas. Or is it fleshed out? Is it flushed or fleshed? I don't know, but it seems like their music has been fully realized from what it once was when they were starting out. Like, I remember when they were just starting out and they were coming up in the hyperpop community, so it's crazy to see that they're as successful as they are now, and it seems like they're still only beginning. Now, David Shawty wasn't a fully hyperpop artist, especially because he was doing plug and beat type stuff early on. Then he had all these collabs with Youngster Jack that were super hyper poppy, glitch hop, whatever you want to call it, especially with the song Under Pressure that went viral on TikTok. But then for a while he was doing something I really enjoyed where he was kind of fusing the rage and hyperpop sounds together. Songs like I Ran were probably some of my favorites from that time, and he definitely had a very weird and unique style that at times wasn't my favorite, but then sometimes it was really good. Regardless, at some point he had some allegations, and to this day I'm still not even sure what happened, what it was fully, or like if it was even true, but I think that really derailed his career. And then on top of that, I think he had a lot of drug issues as well, and he fell off kind of hard from his peak, especially compared to his contemporaries. So if the allegations are true, that's good to see. If they're not, then that's sad to see. I'm still not fully sure what it's all about. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments below what the verdict is. But yeah, sorry, David Shawty. Funeral was a tad bit smaller than a lot of the artists I've covered, but he was one of my favorites from this era because his music was never too hyper. He just did the pitched up vocals, but he would do a wide variety of stuff. He would do the more hyper pop type beats, the more rap or rage type beats. He would do like emo type beats, but his production and his vocal style was very unique, especially because he pitched up his vocals in like a cool way and he had a cool voice. And yeah, his production was so tough to me. Yeah, he had albums like Super Plastic, Eviscerated. I loved those in the gym. Those were hard. And then he had stuff like Sicario and Remorse too, which are I think a little bit more sad if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I really liked his stuff back in the day, and he's still putting out music and again has a strong core audience. I also DM'd with him a little bit back in the day, and he's a pretty cool guy. So shout out to Funeral. Like I said, it seems like everyone from this era is still making music and for the most part is doing well. Of course, I didn't get to everyone in this video. I mentioned some people like Curtains. I remember there's Alden. Of course, you got Login, 50 Landing. A lot of these people are still releasing music or sometimes releasing music. I don't know if they're doing it full time or what. But I talked about like the biggest, my favorites from that era. And let me know who I missed and how they're doing today in the comments below. And what you think about that era, because I kind of miss it. It was a good fun time. So let me know down below in the comments. See ya.
I gotta stop bopping my head. It throws mixed signals.
Yeah, well, I mean, the melody is there.
Yeah.
The beats are good. It's
That's
just like,
that's why I'm bopping my head.
and his voice was kind of cool until he went beep boop.
Yeah,
I was like, bro,
right at the beginning, I was like, all right, this is gonna be cool. This is gonna be cool. And he said, beep, beep. Oh my gosh, dude.